This is the story of how Patricia Asiedua, better known as Nana Agradaa, turned a house of worship into a house of cards, and how her promises of prosperity led to a very punitive reckoning. On July 3rd, 2025, a circuit court in Accra sentenced her to 15 years in prison. But this case is more controversial than you think. Here is what really happened. In October 2022, Patricia Asiedua, founder of Heaven Way Champions International Ministry in Wager, made an irresistible announcement that would change everything. She displayed stacks of crisp 200 cedi notes like trophies and promised that anyone who attended an all-night service would walk away with their share of 300,000 Ghana cedis. For countless Ghanaians struggling in tough economic times to pay rent, to start businesses and whatnot, this seemed like a divine lifeline. The image of those bundled banknotes seared into viewers' minds, and desperation made the impossible seem possible. On October 7th, 2022, people arrived from across the country, some traveling from as far as Obuasi with their wives and dreams. The church was packed to capacity, with hundreds of believers seeking both spiritual and financial nourishment. The service began normally at 6 p.m. with pastors ministering, praise and worship, and normal church offering. At 9 p.m., the star of the show, Patricia, took the stage, delivered a sermon, made an altar call, and announced that it was time for the donation. But this is where the story takes a sinister turn. According to the facts narrated by the court, Patricia suddenly ordered her men to turn off the lights and cameras. In that darkness, she announced that due to the overwhelming crowd, people will be grouped to ensure an equitable sharing. Now here's the twist. The grouping was based on ability to pay. Those who could pay 1,000 cedis were promised 50,000 Ghana cedis to share among groups of at least 20. Those paying 900 cedis were promised 40,000 cedis, and so on. One victim joined the 500 cedi group, promised 25,000 cedis. Because this group was under 20 people, he had to pay 540 Ghana cedis instead. Each group received a chit specifying what they had paid and what they were supposed to receive. The church had become a pyramid scheme with Patricia at the apex. After collecting all the money, Patricia delivered a devastating revelation. The money wasn't a gift as promised, but rather an offering. Kofine Ama, a traditional church offering in Ghana made on a day-born voluntary basis. What had been advertised as free money had become a mandatory payment disguised as religious giving. In a final twist analyzed by cybersecurity experts in court, she asked that anyone who could pay 2,000 cedis should come forward and collect the chits from the group leaders. Some people did, but as investigators later determined, these were co-conspirators, regular church members who were very aware of her tricks and played part of the elaborate scheme. The congregation erupted in anger. People who had been promised blessings found themselves swindled, but Patricia seemed to have planned for this eventuality too. Thugs, some wearing army and militia colors, appeared to quell any uprising. The house of God became a battlefield, and the congregation themselves found themselves not just financially robbed, but also physically intimidated. The victims reported the incident to the authorities, and Patricia made a crucial admission in her police statements after being arrested that the victims' assertions were correct, admissions that would later seal her fate. She was charged with 1 count of charlatanic advertisement and 4 counts of defrauding by false pretenses. Prosecution called 4 witnesses, 2 victims, a cybersecurity analyst, and a case investigator. The victim's testimony painted a vivid picture of the entire deception. One explained how he believed the promise was real because of the displayed bundles of 200 cedi notes. The cybersecurity analyst presented intelligence reports after analyzing all the viral videos from the event. The investigator's testimony was also damning, confirming that those who had paid 2,000 cedis to obtain the chits were co-conspirators in Patricia's scheme. Now here's where the story gets controversial. In November 2024, Patricia opened her defense with a completely different narrative that challenged everything that the prosecution claimed. Patricia testified that she was indeed the founder of the church, and she frequently distributed relief items to attract people into God's kingdom. She admitted planning a special all-night service to celebrate her birthday, and that she intended to donate 300,000 cedis as charity to new attendees and church members. But here's her version of events. She claimed the event started normally at 6 p.m. with pastors ministering, praise and worship, and regular church offering. She arrived at 9 p.m., delivered her sermon, made an altar call, and then the donations were made as planned. But she made the donations, according to her, to selected individuals only. Most crucially, Patricia completely denied that the lights were ever turned off, and denied the entire narrative about grouping people according to their ability to pay. According to her, she distributed money during preaching mainly to new members, frequent donors, and long-standing members, like any normal church service. Patricia wasn't alone in her fight. She brought church members to testify in her favor, creating a battle of narratives that made this case particularly intriguing. One church member testified that the church was largely rooted in donations, which promote attendance and energize the congregation. He claimed he received 5,000 cedis as a gift that night, but didn't give any money in exchange, directly trying to contradict the prosecution's version. Another witness, the woman's leader, testified that there was no fraud and questioned why people would give their lives to Christ if they were defrauded during an altar call. She insisted that any money paid was given freely and without inducement. This created a very puzzling legal conundrum. Was this a carefully orchestrated scam, or was it a misunderstood religious service that got out of hand? The court found several issues that undermined Patricia's defense. In one exhibit tendered by her own witnesses, the MC of the program was heard saying that the place was so jammed, and that is why the lights were going on and off, confirming the prosecution's narrative about the lights being turned off. Even more damaging, one of Patricia's own witnesses tendered a video from the event showing Patricia with her collaborators holding chits on the stage, evidence that directly supported the prosecution's story about the grouping scheme. The court identified crucial contradictions in Patricia's testimony that destroyed her credibility. She told the court that she was fasting and praying and therefore had no time to watch TV, and claimed that she saw the controversial videos for the first time when it was played in court. However, in her police statements made when the matters were still fresh in her mind, she admitted creating the videos and publishing them on Facebook and on television. This contradiction was devastating to her defense. Patricia also submitted another video advert where, instead of promising to give out cash to the needy, she was offering interest-free loans, what the court saw as an afterthought and a damage control attempt. Judge Evelyn Asamoah dismantled these arguments and was convinced that Patricia published the videos with intent to deceive and indeed defrauded the complainants. She was convicted on 3 counts but acquitted on 2 others, where the prosecution didn't lead sufficient evidence. The sentencing phase revealed interesting legal procedures. As a female convict, Patricia was required to take a pregnancy test, as the law mandates that non-obviously postmenopausal women be tested before sentencing. She tested negative. Patricia's lawyer then made a passionate appeal for mitigation, stating that she was a mother of 5, a church leader, and indeed a first-time offender, and that the 3-year trial was an ordeal enough to change her ways. But the prosecution declined leniency, noting the premeditation and that Patricia had been convicted in 2021 of similar offenses but only paid a 10,000 cedi fine. The prosecution requested the court to hand down a sentence that would send shivers down the spine of any like-minded person, emphasizing the prevalence of church scams in Ghana's media space. The court thereafter quoted several authorities, including Ghanaian authors like Stephen Ofei and Daniel Korang, and took into consideration the prevalent nature of such offenses in Ghana, the status of patients as a leader of a church organization, the premeditation and the professional execution of the offense, and also took into consideration the prosecution's submission and the fact that indeed no remorse was shown by Patricia. The gavel fell with a finality that echoed throughout Ghana's media space. Agradaa was sentenced to 25 penalty units on count 1 and 15 years each on counts 2 and 3 to run concurrently. The woman who promised to share God's blessings with the poor found herself in jail. The case represents more than one woman's fall from grace. It highlights the thin line between religious freedom, faith, and exploitation in Ghana. In a country where the line between faith and desperation blurs, this case serves as a stark reminder that not everyone who speaks of divine blessing has divine intentions, and perhaps this is the most divine justice of all.